Grace Morrison's hands shook as she clutched the telegram. The mine was real. Her dead husband hadn't lied. But standing in Silverton's frozen mud, with 2 starving daughters and a bag of worthless Boston clothes, she understood the truth: nobody wanted a widow who owned a silver mine. The assayer's office door slammed in her face. The hotel clerk laughed. The sheriff looked away. Then a drunk stumbled past, reeking of whiskey and shame, and said 5 words that changed everything. "You'll die up there alone." Pause for channel subscription call. Before we continue Grace's story, if you love tales of second chances and frontier courage, subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. These stories take hours to craft, and your support means everything. Also, comment below with your city or country. I want to see how far these stories of hope and resilience travel across the world. Now let's see if Grace Morrison survives her first night in Silverton. The assayer spit tobacco juice onto the boardwalk, inches from Grace's worn boots. "Lady, I don't care what your telegram says. Women don't own mines. Women don't understand claims. And women sure as hell don't walk into my office demanding surveys." Grace held the paper steady, though her fingers trembled. "My husband filed this claim 18 months ago. The deed is legal. I need you to verify the boundaries so I can..." "So you can what?" He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Dig silver out of a mountain, you and what crew?" His eyes traveled to her daughters, standing behind her in the street. "Them little girls gonna swing pickaxes." Lily, 8 years old, stepped forward. "Our papa said the mine was real," he said. "Your papa's dead, sweetheart." The assayer's voice wasn't unkind, just final. "Plenty of men die chasing silver dreams. Don't mean the dreams were real." Grace pulled Lily back, felt Emma's small hand grip her skirt. "I have money for the survey fee." "No, you don't." He nodded toward her threadbare coat, her daughter's 2 short dresses. "You got maybe $20 left, maybe less. That'll keep you fed for a week if you're careful. Then what? Then I work the claim." He laughed, actually laughed. "Go home, Mrs. Morrison. Back to Boston or wherever you crawled from. Silverton ain't for widows." The door shut. The lock clicked. Grace stood on the boardwalk, breathing carefully. "Don't cry. Don't let them see you cry." Behind her, the town moved: miners, trudging toward shift change, prostitutes, leaning from second-story windows, freight wagons churning mud into black soup. Nobody looked at her. Nobody stopped. "Mama?" Emma's voice was small. "Are we going to the mine now?" Grace looked up at the mountains. Silverton sat in a bowl of peaks 11,000 feet above the world, where winter came in September and didn't leave until June. It was October now. The aspens burned gold against granite cliffs. Beautiful, deadly. "Yes, baby, we're going to the mine." "How do we find it?" That was the question, wasn't it? Her husband's letters had been vague: 2 miles up Anvil Creek. Follow the old pack trail, look for the timber claim marker. But Anvil Creek had a dozen tributaries, and pack trails crisscrossed the mountains like spider webs. "We'll find it," Grace said. They walked toward the livery. She'd paid for 2 weeks of stable fees in Denver before the stagecoach north. Now she needed to retrieve her mare and the pack mule that carried everything they owned: 3 trunks of clothes, a bag of books, her husband's mining tools, and $12 in silver coins sewn into her corset. The livery owner was a thin man with kind eyes. He looked at her hire papers, then at her daughters, then back at the papers. "Mrs. Morrison, I hate to ask, but do you have a place to stay tonight?" "We're going to my husband's mine." "Ma'am." He removed his hat. "It's near 4 o'clock. Even if you knew exactly where you were going, you wouldn't make it before dark. And dark comes fast up here, fast and cold." "I'll manage." "There's a boarding house on." "I tried the boarding house." Grace didn't elaborate. The landlady had taken one look at her and said, "No credit, no children, no exceptions." 3 other places had said the same. Silverton had plenty of rooms for miners, none for widows. The livery owner studied her for a long moment. There's a camp about a mile north. Old prospectors live there, men who worked out their claims or lost their grub stakes. They don't bother nobody. You could maybe— Thank you. Grace took the mare's lead rope. But we'll manage. She loaded the mule, tied the trunks down with shaking fingers, lifted Emma onto the mare's back, told Lily to hold on tight. The livery owner watched her go, hat still in his hands, saying nothing. They followed Anvil Creek north. The trail was clear at first, wide enough for wagons packed dirt markers every quarter mile. Then it narrowed. Then it split. Grace chose left because her husband's letter had mentioned crossing the creek twice. But after the second crossing, the trail vanished entirely. "Mama, I'm cold." Emma's teeth chattered. "I know, sweetheart." "Where's the mine?" "Close." It wasn't close. Grace had no idea where it was. She'd been a schoolteacher in Boston, for God's sake. She could recite Wordsworth and parse Latin, but she couldn't read mountains. The aspens looked identical. The granite cliffs gave no clues. Her husband's letters might as well have been written in code. The sun dropped behind the western peaks. Temperature fell like a stone. Grace kept moving because stopping meant admitting defeat, and admitting defeat meant going back to Silverton, which meant sleeping in the street, which meant her daughters freezing. "Mama." Lily's voice was tight. "Mama, someone's watching us." Grace turned. A man stood on the ridge above them, silhouette sharp against the dying light. Tall, broad-shouldered, utterly still. Watching. Her hand moved to the rifle in her saddle scabbard. The man descended. He moved carefully, picking his way down loose scree, one hand on the rock face for balance. When he reached the trail, Grace saw him clearly, maybe 40 years old, unshaven clothes, worn but clean. His eyes were bloodshot. He smelled like whiskey. "You're lost," he said, not a question. "We're fine." "No, you're not." He pointed at the trail behind her. "That way leads to a mine shaft. Flooded. 100-foot drop. Dark in 30 minutes. You'd walk right off the edge." Grace's throat tightened. "How do you know where we're going?" "I don't. But I know you don't either." He looked at her daughters. "How old are they?" "That's not your concern." "Lady, everything up here is my concern." His voice was rough but not cruel. "I'm the only engineer left in this valley who's sober enough to keep people from killing themselves, usually." He swayed slightly. "What claim you looking for?" "The Morrison claim. Anvil Creek." Something flickered in his eyes. "Thomas Morrison. You knew my husband. Knew of him." The man was quiet for a moment. "He's dead." "Yes." "The mine's real then. I thought he was another dreamer." He turned and started walking uphill. "Follow me." Grace didn't move. "I don't know you." "Name's Flint. James Garrett. Used to engineer for Consolidated Silver. Don't anymore." He kept walking. "Your girls are freezing. The trail to Morrison's claim is another mile and crosses 2 rock slides. You won't make it in the dark." "Why should I trust you?" He stopped, looked back. "Because if I wanted to hurt you, I already would have. And because nobody else in Silverton will help you. Not the assayer, not the sheriff, not the mining company that wants your claim." "What mining company?" "Consolidated. They thought your husband's claim was worthless. Now they know it's not. They'll be coming for it." He resumed walking. "You want to fight them alone?" "Be my guest. But your girls will freeze first." Lily whispered, "Mama, I'm so cold." Grace looked at her daughters. Emma's lips were blue. Lily's hands were white. The temperature was still dropping. She followed. The mine appeared after 20 minutes, a timber-framed entrance, a small cabin beside it, a creek running nearby. Flint pushed the cabin door open. Inside was one room, a pot-belly stove, a rope bed, a table, 2 chairs, supplies on rough shelves. "Your husband built this?" Grace asked. "Looks like it." Flint checked the stove, found wood stacked beside it, built a fire with steady hands. "He was smarter than most, had water, shelter, timber rights. If the claim's real, he died sitting on a fortune." "It's real." Grace helped Emma down from the mare, wrapped her in a blanket from the trunk. The assayer didn't believe me, but the assayer works for Consolidated. Flint lit the kindling. They pay him to discourage competition. Grace stared at him. That's illegal. Welcome to Silverton, Mrs. Morrison. Everything worth doing is illegal. He straightened. I'll sleep outside. You and the girls take the cabin. Wait. Grace caught his arm. You said the mining company wants my claim. What will they do? Depends. He met her eyes. They'll try to buy you out first. Offer you money, not much, but enough to get you back to Boston. If you refuse, they'll file a boundary dispute, claim your husband's markers were invalid. If that fails... He didn't finish. If that fails... Accidents happen in mines, Mrs. Morrison. Cave-ins, floods, explosions. All very tragic. All very convenient. Her stomach dropped. You're saying they'd kill me. I'm saying they'd kill anyone standing between them and silver. He pulled free of her grip. But tonight you're safe. Tonight worry about keeping your girls warm. He walked out before she could respond. Grace stood in the cabin doorway watching him disappear into the darkness. Lily appeared beside her. Mama, who is he? I don't know, baby. Do you trust him? Grace thought about the way he'd built the fire, quick, efficient, no wasted motion. The way he'd carried wood inside without being asked. The way he'd looked at her daughters with something that wasn't quite pity. More like recognition. I don't know that either. But she closed the door and locked it anyway. The morning came cold and bright. Grace woke to find Flint already working, splitting wood, stacking it against the cabin wall, moving with purpose despite the tremor in his hands. He'd slept outside. Frost covered his coat. She opened the door. You'll freeze. Already frozen. He didn't look up. Coffee's on the stove. Made it at sunrise. Grace poured 2 cups, brought one outside. He took it without comment, drank it black. His hands shook so badly he nearly dropped the mug. How long since you've eaten? She asked. Don't remember. There's beans in my pack. And I don't need charity, Mrs. Morrison. It's not charity. It's payment. She met his eyes. You helped us last night. I'm repaying the debt. He studied her for a moment, then nodded once. They ate in silence, beans and hardtack coffee, so strong it tasted like punishment. The girls woke slowly, stumbling outside to stare at the mountains surrounding them. Lily walked to the mine entrance, peered into darkness. Don't go in there, Flint said sharply. Lily jumped back. I just wanted to see. It's not safe. Never go in a mine alone. Never go in without a lamp and a partner. Never go in if you smell rotten eggs or hear water rushing. He set down his coffee. Understand? Yes, sir. Flint, he corrected. Don't call me sir. I don't deserve it. Grace watched him. Why are you helping us? Because nobody helped me. He stood, brushed off his pants. 4 years ago, I designed a shaft for Consolidated. New silver vein, deep and rich. I calculated the support beams, the ventilation, the water table. Consolidated approved it. We started digging. He paused. 3 months later, the shaft collapsed. 12 men died, including my brother. His voice was flat. The investigation said it was my fault. Faulty calculations. Negligence. They were right. Were they? Flint looked at her. Does it matter 12 men died? I designed the shaft. That's all anyone needs to know. That's not all I need to know. Grace stepped closer. Did you make a mistake, or did Consolidated cut corners? I don't. He stopped. They rushed the timeline. I told them the ground wasn't stable. They ignored me. But I signed the plans anyway. So who's responsible? Me or them? Both. That's not how the law sees it. The engineer signs. The engineer hangs. He picked up his axe. Figuratively, anyway. Consolidated fired me. Blacklisted me across the territory. Now I live on this mountain and drink until I can't remember their faces. Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. Mama, I'm hungry. I'll make breakfast, sweetheart. Flint watched Emma for a long moment. She looks like him. Like who? My brother, same eyes. He turned away. I'll check the mine entrance while you cook. Make sure it's stable. He disappeared into the timber before Grace could respond. The mine was a wound in the mountain. Flint stood at the entrance lamp held high, studying the support beams. They were solid. Thomas Morrison had known what he was doing, but the shaft beyond was dark and unknown. Could be 10 feet deep, could be 100. Is it safe? Grace appeared beside him. Safe enough. Your husband shored it properly. Flint pointed to the timbers. See those notches? That's good joinery. Means he cared about not dying. Can we go in? You got lamps, rope canaries? Grace blinked. Canaries? Birds. They die before you do if there's bad air. Miner's early warning system. He stepped back from the entrance. You don't have supplies. You don't have equipment. You don't even have a survey map showing where your claim boundaries are. Then help me get them. Flint turned to her. Mrs. Morrison. Grace. If we're going to work together, call me Grace. We're not working together. Why not? She crossed her arms. You said you were an engineer. I need an engineer. You said Consolidated wants my claim. I need someone who knows how they operate. And you clearly need a reason to live. His voice was bitter. That what you're offering redemption through hard labor. I'm offering wages and a chance to prove those 12 men didn't die because you're incompetent. They died because Consolidated is greedy. Flint stared at her. You're serious. I'm desperate. There's a difference. Grace stepped closer. I have a mine I can't work, 2 daughters I can't feed, and a mining company that wants me dead. You have skills I need and apparently nothing better to do than drink yourself to death on this mountain. So yes, Mr. Garrett, I'm serious. He was quiet for a long time. Behind them, the girls played by the creek throwing stones, their laughter bright and fragile. I haven't been sober in 4 years, Flint said finally. Then you're overdue. I'll fail you. I fail everyone. Maybe. Grace met his eyes. Or maybe you'll succeed. Only one way to find out. Flint looked at the mine entrance, then at the girls, then back at Grace. Something shifted in his face. Not hope exactly, more like the memory of hope. 1 month, he said. I'll survey the claim shore up the entrance, teach you basic safety protocols. After that, you're on your own. Agreed. And I work for wages, cash, not charity. I already said that. And I sleep outside, always. I don't... He stopped. I don't stay in places with children. Grace understood. Because they remind you of your brother. He didn't answer. Didn't need to. 1 month, Grace repeated. She held out her hand. Flint looked at it for a long moment, then shook. His grip was firm despite the tremor. 1 month, he agreed. Neither of them believed it. Odd. The first week was hell. Flint measured the claim boundaries while Grace tried to make the cabin livable. The roof leaked. The stove smoked. The creek water tasted like minerals. Every morning, Grace woke to frost inside the windows, and her daughters shivering under inadequate blankets. Flint taught them to split wood patch leaks with pitch and canvas filter water through charcoal. He didn't talk much, just demonstrated, waited for them to try, corrected their mistakes with grunts and nods. But he was there every morning, sober and steady, hands shaking less each day. Lily watched him constantly. Emma brought him flowers. Flint accepted both with visible discomfort, like a man who'd forgotten how to be seen. On the 8th day, riders came. Grace was washing clothes in the creek when she heard hooves. 3 men, well-dressed, well-armed, smiling like predators. The one in front was maybe 50, silver-haired, expensive coat. He dismounted with the ease of someone who'd been riding all his life. Mrs. Morrison. His voice was smooth. I'm Andrew Sutton. I run Consolidated Silver. Grace straightened, water dripping from her hands. What do you want? To make you an offer. Sutton gestured at the mine. Your husband filed a promising claim, but working it alone is impossible. Consolidated has resources, crew's equipment capital. We'd like to buy you out. Fair price. Enough to get you and your daughters back to civilization. It's not for sale. Mrs. Morrison, please be reasonable. Mining isn't for amateurs, especially not widows. The work is dangerous. The costs are staggering. You'll spend everything you have and find nothing. He stepped closer. I'm offering you a way out. Take it. No. Sutton's smile thinned. May I ask why? Because my husband died believing this mine would provide for his family. I won't sell his dream for your convenience. Your husband was a fool. The words came quiet, deadly. He refused our initial offer, insisted on working alone. That stubbornness killed him. Grace froze. What did you say? The cave-in that killed your husband. It didn't have to happen. Consolidated offered him partnership. He refused. We could have prevented. You're lying. Am I? Sutton pulled a paper from his coat. Here's our offer letter, dated 6 months before his death. He wrote back quite rudely, I might add, declining. 2 months later, he was dead. He held the paper out. You want to follow his path, be my guest. But don't pretend I didn't warn you. Flint appeared from the mine entrance, lamp in hand. He looked at Sutton, at the riders, at Grace. You need to leave. Sutton turned. Garrett, I heard you were skulking around here, still drinking yourself to death. Not today. Pity. You're better at that than engineering. Sutton mounted his horse. Mrs. Morrison, my offer stands for 48 hours. After that, I'll file a boundary dispute. Your husband's claim markers were improperly placed. The mine will revert to Consolidated. That's a lie, Flint said flatly. Prove it. Sutton smiled. Oh, wait, you can't. Because you're a disgraced drunk and nobody trusts your surveys anymore. He tipped his hat. Good day, Mrs. Morrison. I hope you make the smart choice. They rode away. Grace stood by the creek shaking. Not from cold, from rage. He killed my husband, she whispered. Flint was beside her now. You don't know that. Yes, I do. She looked at him. Consolidated wanted the claim. Thomas refused. So they made it look like an accident. Grace, tell me I'm wrong. Flint said nothing, because she wasn't wrong. They both knew it. Can you prove the claim markers are valid? Grace asked. Maybe, if I survey them properly. But then survey them. Her voice was steel. I'm not selling. Not to him. Not to anyone. You're declaring war against Consolidated. You understand that. I understand my husband is dead. I understand they're threatening my daughters. I understand nobody in this town will help me except a drunk engineer who thinks he's a failure. She met his eyes. So yes, Mr. Garrett, I'm declaring war. Are you with me or not? Flint looked at the mine, at the mountains, at the cabin where Emma was singing to Lily. He thought about his brother's face, about 12 men buried under rock, about 4 years spent drowning in whiskey and shame. I'm with you, he said. Grace nodded once. Then let's get to work. They worked like the mountain might collapse tomorrow. Flint surveyed every boundary marker, measured every angle, documented everything in neat ledgers that proved Thomas Morrison's claim was legal down to the inch. Grace hauled timber, shored up the cabin, taught the girls to shoot in case Consolidated sent men in the night. Lily took to it naturally. Emma cried. 2 weeks in, Flint went to town for supplies. He returned with a black eye and bleeding knuckles. What happened? Grace demanded. Ran into some of Consolidated's miners. They had opinions about me helping you. He spat blood. I shared my opinions back. Flint. I'm fine. He unloaded the pack mule flour, coffee lamp oil explosives. But we're running out of time. Sutton's filing his dispute day after tomorrow. Once it's official, he can claim the mines in legal limbo. shut down operations, freeze your assets. Can he do that? With the right judge? Yes. Flint sat on the cabin step wincing. He owns half the town, Grace, the sheriff, the assayer, probably the judge too. Grace sat beside him. Then what do? We prove the mine is profitable. If you're actively extracting silver, Sutton can't claim it's abandoned or improperly marked. The law protects working claims. How do we prove it's profitable? Flint looked at the mine entrance. We go inside. Grace followed his gaze. You said it wasn't safe. It's not. But neither is waiting for Sutton to steal it. He stood. Tomorrow morning, you, me, and Lamps. We'll go down 50 feet. If there's silver, we'll know. And if there's not, then we're dead anyway. Might as well find out for sure. That night, Grace couldn't sleep. She lay in the dark, listening to her daughters breathe, thinking about cave-ins and flooding, and 12 men crushed under stone. Thinking about her husband's last moments. Had he known the mountain was unstable? Had he tried to run? Had he thought of her and the girls as the rock fell? She got up, walked outside. Flint sat by the creek staring at nothing. Can't sleep either, she asked. Never could. He handed her his coffee cup. You're scared. Terrified. Good. Scared people are careful. Reckless people are dead. He picked up a stone, tossed it in the water. I won't let anything happen to you down there. I promise. You can't promise that. I know. He met her eyes. But I'm promising anyway. Grace drank his coffee. It was terrible. She drank it anyway. Why are you really doing this? She asked. Doing what? Helping me. Staying sober. Risking your life for a woman you barely know. Flint was quiet for a long time. Because 4 years ago I didn't help when I should have. I saw Consolidated cutting corners. I knew the shaft was dangerous. I said something, but I didn't fight. I let them bully me into signing plans I knew were wrong. He looked at his hands. 12 men died because I was a coward. You're not a coward. I was. Maybe still am. He stood. But you're giving me a chance to be something else, even if it kills me. Flint. Get some sleep, Grace. Tomorrow we find out if your husband's dream was real. He walked away before she could respond. They descended at dawn. The mine shaft dropped straight down, timber-reinforced, a ladder bolted to one wall. Flint went first, lamp held high, testing each rung. Grace followed, heart-pounding, Emma's face in her mind. If she died down here, her daughters would be alone. Orphans. Sutton would take the mine, take everything. Don't think about it, Flint called up. Just climb. 20 feet, 30. The air grew cold and damp. 40 feet. Grace's arms burned. 50 feet. The shaft opened into a horizontal tunnel. Flint helped her down, held the lamp up. Stay close, he said. They moved forward. The tunnel was narrow, barely wide enough for 2 people. Water dripped somewhere. The lamp cast wild shadows. Flint stopped. Look. Grace looked. The tunnel wall glittered. Is that silver? Flint touched the rock with trembling fingers. High-grade ore, rich as anything I've seen. He turned to her face, illuminated by lamplight. Your husband wasn't a dreamer, Grace. He found it. He actually found it. Grace's knees went weak. How much? Can't tell without a full survey, but this vein could be worth 50,000. Could be more. He laughed, the sound strange in the enclosed space. Consolidated knew. That's why they want it so badly. Then we have proof. We can fight the dispute. Yes. Flint's expression shifted. But Grace, this also means Sutton won't stop. He'll try everything: legal challenges, sabotage, violence. He's got too much to lose. So do I. They stared at each other in the lamplight. 50 feet underground, standing on a fortune, 2 broken people who'd found something worth fighting for. Then we fight, Flint said. Grace nodded. Then we fight." They climbed back up. Sunlight hit Grace's face like a blessing. Lily and Emma ran to her, and she held them tight, breathing hard, alive. "Did you find silver?" Lily asked. "Yes, baby." "Are we rich?" Grace looked at Flint. He was staring at the mine entrance like it was a battlefield. "Not yet," Grace said. "But we will be." If they survived. The assayer's office smelled like tobacco and corruption. Grace stood at the counter, Flint's survey documents spread between them, while the assayer pretended to study numbers he'd already decided to reject. "Mrs. Morrison, these measurements are accurate." Flint leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "I surveyed every marker twice. Thomas Morrison's claim is legal, filed properly, boundaries exact." The assayer didn't look up. "Mr. Garrett, given your history with Consolidated, I'm not sure your surveys carry much weight anymore." "My history is that I told the truth and they didn't like it." Flint stepped forward. "Those numbers are solid. You know it. I know it. Question is whether you're man enough to admit it." The assayer's jaw tightened. "I'll need to verify with the county office. Could take weeks." "The dispute hearing is in 3 days," Grace said quietly. "Then I suggest you pray for a miracle, Mrs. Morrison." He pushed the papers back across the counter. "Because without county verification, Judge Holloway will rule in Consolidated's favor. That's just how things work." Grace gathered the documents with steady hands. "How much did Sutton pay you?" The assayer's face went red. "Get out of my office." "How much?" Grace didn't move. "Because I'm curious what a man's integrity costs these days. Is it $50, $100? Or did he just promise you wouldn't lose your job when Consolidated owns half the county?" "I said get out." Flint put a hand on Grace's shoulder. "Come on, we're done here." They walked into the street. Silverton was busy Saturday afternoon, miners coming down from the high claims, prostitutes working the saloon circuit, freight wagons churning mud. Nobody looked at them. Nobody cared. "He's right, you know," Flint said. "Judge Holloway is Sutton's man. Has been for years. Without county verification, we'll lose." Grace watched a freight wagon pass loaded with silver ore heading to the smelter. Someone's fortune. Someone's dream realized. "Then we go over his head," she said. "To who?" "The territorial governor." Flint stared at her. "Grace, that's in Denver." "I know. 3 days' ride if the weather holds." She turned to him. "You said we needed proof the mine is profitable. We have proof. We just need someone honest to look at it." "The governor doesn't care about one widow's mining claim." "Maybe not. But he cares about corruption. About companies buying judges and officials. About fraud." Grace met his eyes. "You worked for Consolidated. You know how they operate. Help me document it. Every bribe, every threat, every corner they cut that killed miners." Flint's face went pale. "You're asking me to testify against them." "I'm asking you to tell the truth." "They'll destroy me. What's left to destroy anyway?" He looked away. "Everything. I've got a sister in Denver. A nephew. Consolidated knows where they live. If I talk, they'll threaten them. I know." Grace's voice softened. "I'm not asking you to sacrifice your family. I'm asking you to help me build a case strong enough that Sutton can't touch any of us." "That case doesn't exist." "Then we'll create it." Flint was quiet for a long moment. Down the street, miners stumbled out of a saloon laughing, drunk alive. 4 years ago, his brother had been one of them. Young, stupid, trusting the company that promised safety and delivered coffins. "I'll write down what I know," Flint said finally. "Everything. Names, dates, bribes, shortcuts." But Grace, even with all that, the governor might not listen. Powerful men protect powerful men. Then we make him listen. "How?" Grace smiled, but it wasn't pleasant. "By making sure the newspapers hear the story first. Public pressure works wonders on political careers." Flint almost laughed. You're learning fast. I'm learning from you. They walked back to the livery in silence. Grace was halfway there when she realized Flint wasn't beside her anymore. She turned. He stood in the middle of the street staring at the saloon across from them. Flint. I need a drink. His voice was raw. I can't think about my brother without... Yes, you can. Grace walked back to him. You've been sober 2 weeks. Don't break now. You don't understand what it's like, remembering, seeing their faces, knowing I killed them. You didn't kill them. Consolidated did. I signed the plans. Under duress, after they ignored your warnings. Grace caught his arm. Flint, look at me. You're not drinking today. You're going back to that cabin, you're going to write down everything you know, and you're going to help me fight these bastards. Understand? He was shaking. Full-body tremors that had nothing to do with cold. I can't. You can, and you will, because Emma asked me this morning if you were her friend, and I said yes. Don't make me a liar. Flint's face crumpled. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair, but we're doing it anyway. She pulled him toward the livery. Come on, we've got work to do. He followed. One step, another, away from the saloon, away from the bottle, away from 4 years of drowning. Grace didn't let go of his arm until they were on horseback, heading back toward the mine. The cabin was cold when they arrived. Lily had kept the fire going, but barely. Emma was crying, wrapped in blankets, shivering. What's wrong? Grace knelt beside her. My stomach hurts, really bad. Grace felt her forehead, burning hot. Flint, get water boiling, now. He moved fast, building up the fire, setting the kettle on. Grace stripped Emma's dress, checked for rashes, felt for swelling. Nothing obvious. But the fever was real, and high fevers in children killed fast up here, where doctors were scarce and medicine scarcer. When did this start? Grace asked Lily. After lunch. She said her tummy felt funny. Then she threw up. What did she eat? Beans, same as me. Grace's mind raced. Food poisoning possible. But Lily was fine. Appendicitis too young maybe. Fever from bad water. They'd been filtering it, but Grace. Flint appeared with the kettle. There's willow bark in my pack. It'll help with the fever. You're sure? My brother used to get sick all the time. Ma made willow tea. He was already moving, digging through supplies. It won't cure her, but it'll buy us time. Time for what Grace didn't ask. Because the answer was time to ride to town, find a doctor, beg for help they couldn't afford from people who wanted them dead. Flint made the tea. Emma drank it whimpering. Grace held her rocking, singing songs from Boston that felt like they belonged to someone else's life. Lily sat by the fire, arms wrapped around her knees, silent. She's going to be okay, right, Mama? Yes, baby. You promise? Grace met Flint's eyes over Emma's head. He looked away. I promise. Grace lied. By midnight, Emma's fever broke. She slept fitful, but breathing color returning to her cheeks. Grace sat beside her, exhausted, terrified, grateful. Flint brought coffee, sat on the floor with his back against the wall. Thank you, Grace whispered. Don't thank me yet. If the fever comes back, it won't. You don't know that. I'm choosing to believe it. Grace drank the coffee. It was terrible. Everything Flint made was terrible, but it was hot and strong and real. Tell me about your brother. Flint was quiet for so long Grace thought he wouldn't answer. Daniel, 3 years younger than me. Stupid kid who followed me everywhere. I got hired by Consolidated, he got hired too. I said mining was dangerous, but he wouldn't listen. Flint's hands shook. He was in the first crew that went down after I signed the plans. 28 years old, going to marry a girl from Leadville, had the ring and everything. What was her name? Sarah. Pretty thing. Cried at the funeral for 3 hours straight. He stared at nothing. She married someone else 6 months later. Didn't blame her. Why wait for a dead man? Did you love her? What? No. He stopped. Maybe a little, but Daniel loved her more. That's what mattered. Grace shifted, careful not to wake Emma. You know it wasn't your fault, right? The collapse. You did everything you could. I signed the plans. After Consolidated pressured you, after they threatened your job, after they ignored every warning you gave. She met his eyes. Flint, you're not responsible for their greed. The law says different. The law is wrong. He almost smiled. You really believe that? I believe Sutton used you, just like he's trying to use me, and I believe we're going to make him pay for it. How we're nobodies. He owns half the territory. He doesn't own us. Grace looked at her daughters. And he doesn't own this mine. Not yet. Not ever. Flint watched her for a long moment. You're stubborn, you know that. I'm a widow with 2 children and $12 to my name. Stubborn is all I've got left. $13, Flint said. What? He pulled a coin from his pocket, set it on the floor between them. I'm paid up through the end of the month, remember? That's my first week's wages. Take it. Grace stared at the silver dollar. Flint, I can't. You can. Because Emma might need medicine, and because I'm not drinking it away this time. He stood. Get some sleep. I'll keep watch. He walked outside before she could argue. Grace picked up the coin. It was warm from his pocket, worn smooth from years of use. She thought about him sitting in saloons, spending these coins on whiskey, drowning piece by piece. Thought about him giving it to her instead. She put it with the others sewn into her corset, where Sutton's men couldn't find it. $13. A fortune. A joke. Enough to survive one more week if they were careful. She lay down beside Emma, closed her eyes, and tried not to think about what happened after that week was up. Morning came too fast. Grace woke to Lily shaking her shoulder, eyes wide, terrified. Mama, there are men outside. Grace was up instantly, rifle in hand, heart pounding. Through the cabin's one window, she saw them 5 riders, Consolidated men by their look, circling the cabin like wolves. Andrew Sutton sat his horse at the front, smiling. Flint was already outside, standing between the riders and the cabin door, unarmed except for an axe. Grace pushed the door open. Get inside, Flint. Not yet. He didn't take his eyes off Sutton. Let's hear what the man wants. Sutton dismounted, brushing dust from his coat. Mr. Garrett, still playing hero for lost causes. Still buying judges and killing minors. Sutton's smile never wavered. I'm here with a final offer, Mrs. Morrison. $5,000 for the claim. Cash. Today. Enough to get you and your daughters somewhere safe. Grace stepped onto the porch, rifle loose in her hands. I already refused. That was before you knew what you were facing. Disputed claims take months to resolve. During that time, you can't work the mine. Can't extract ore. Can't make money. He gestured at the cabin. How long can you survive up here? A month. 2 winters coming. Food's expensive, medicine more so. Your daughter was sick last night. What happens next time? Grace's blood went cold. How did you know Emma was sick? I know everything that happens in my territory, Mrs. Morrison. Everything. He stepped closer. I'm not your enemy. I'm a businessman making a fair offer. Take it. Save your girls the suffering. By giving you what you want. By accepting reality. Sutton's voice hardened. You can't win this. The judge will rule against you. The county will seize the claim for unpaid fees. And then where will you be? Penniless. Homeless. Alone. Is your pride worth that? Flint moved, putting himself between Sutton and Grace. She said no. Time to leave. Or what? You'll hit me with that axe. Sutton laughed. Garrett, you're a drunk and a failure. Everyone knows it. You couldn't save your brother. You won't save her. Flint's knuckles went white on the axe handle. Walk away, Grace said quietly, before I shoot you for trespassing. Sutton looked at her rifle, at her face, at the determination in her eyes. Something flickered across his expression. Surprise, maybe. Or respect. Or just recalculation. 48 hours, Mrs. Morrison. Then the offer expires, and the legal machinery begins. Think about your daughters. Think about what you're condemning them to. He mounted his horse. I'll see you in court. They rode away, 5 men dissolving into the timber. Grace lowered the rifle. Her hands were shaking. He knows Emma was sick, she said. He's watching us. Probably has men in the trees right now counting our supplies, timing our movements. Probably, Flint agreed. He's going to make this personal. He already has. Flint turned to her. Grace, he's right about one thing. Disputed claims can take months. We can't wait that long. We need to force a resolution now. How? By going to Denver. Today. You, me, and every piece of evidence we can carry. He looked at the cabin. Lily can watch Emma. They'll be safer here than on the trail anyway. I'm not leaving my daughters alone on this mountain. Then we all go. But Grace, that's 5 days of travel minimum. 3 days to Denver, 1 day to meet the governor. If we're lucky, 1 day back. Can Emma handle that? Grace looked through the cabin window. Emma was awake, sitting up, color better but still pale. Lily was braiding her hair, talking softly, making her laugh. They were so young, so vulnerable. And Sutton knew exactly where they were. We stay together, Grace said. All of us. If Emma gets worse on the trail, we'll find a doctor in one of the camps. But I'm not leaving them here for Sutton's men to threaten. Flint nodded slowly. Then pack light. We leave in an hour. They moved fast. Grace bundled what they needed: food blankets, medicine. Flint's documents, the ore samples that proved the mine was rich. Flint saddled horses, checked rifles, filled canteens. Lily helped Emma dress in layers, tied her hat tight, held her hand. Mama, where are we going? Emma asked. Denver, sweetheart. To see important people who will help us keep the mine. Will it take long? A few days, but we'll be together. That's what matters. They rode out at noon, following the trail down Anvil Creek toward the main road south. Grace looked back once. The cabin stood small and defiant against the mountain. Her husband had built that, had died believing it would save them. She wouldn't let Sutton take it. The trail was rough, steep switchbacks, loose scree creek crossings, swollen with snowmelt. Emma rode in front of Grace, wrapped in blankets, silent. Lily rode behind Flint, nervous but determined. They made 10 miles the first day, camping in a stand of spruce where the wind couldn't reach them. Flint built a fire, boiled water for tea, rationed the food with careful precision. Grace watched him work. 2 weeks ago, he'd been a drunk who could barely stand. Now his hands were steady, his eyes clear. He'd stopped shaking 3 days after they'd found the silver, like having a purpose again had reminded his body how to function. You're staring, he said without looking up. I'm thinking. About how you're different now, sober, focused, like you're remembering how to be the man you were before. I'm not that man anymore. Maybe not. But you're becoming someone better. Grace poured coffee, handed him a cup. The man you were before signed those plans. The man you are now is fighting to make it right. Flint was quiet for a long time. The fire crackled. Emma coughed, a wet, rattling sound that made Grace's chest tighten. She's getting worse, Flint said. I know. There's a mining camp about 15 miles south. Little place called Ophir. Might have a doctor. Might. Best I can promise. He met her eyes. We push hard tomorrow. We'll reach it by nightfall. Grace looked at Emma, asleep against Lily, breathing too fast. Then we push hard. They rode before dawn, following the trail by starlight, stopping only to water the horses. Emma's fever returned by mid-morning. By noon she was delirious, crying, calling for her father. Grace held her singing, praying, bargaining with a God she hadn't spoken to since her husband died. Just a little longer, baby. Just a little longer. Ophir appeared as the sun set a handful of cabins, a stamping mill, a saloon. Flint rode straight to the largest building, dismounted, pounded on the door. A woman answered, maybe 60, gray hair pulled back, suspicious eyes. We're closed. You're the doctor. I run the boarding house. Doctor's next door. She looked past Flint at Grace holding Emma. Her expression shifted. How long she been fevered? 2 days. Bring her inside. The woman, Mrs. Chen, she said her name was cleared. A table laid Emma on it, checked her pulse, her temperature, her throat. She moved with the efficiency of someone who'd seen too much death to waste time on gentleness. Pneumonia, Mrs. Chen said finally. Early stage, but getting worse. She needs medicine and rest. 3 days minimum, maybe more. We don't have 3 days, Grace said. Then you'll have a dead daughter. Mrs. Chen met her eyes. Your choice, lady. But that child doesn't get on a horse again until the fever breaks and the lungs clear. Grace looked at Flint. He was already calculating, she could see it in his face. 3 days here meant missing the court date, meant Sutton winning by default. We stay, Grace said. Grace, we stay. I'm not killing my daughter to save a mine. Flint's jaw tightened. Then I'll go alone. To Denver. I'll take the documents, make the case, buy you time. You can't go alone. They'll dismiss you. A disgraced engineer with an axe to grind. Maybe, but it's better than nothing. He pulled papers from his saddlebag, thrust them at her. These are copies. Everything I know about Consolidated's corruption. If something happens to me, use them. Go to the newspapers. Make noise. Don't let Sutton win quietly. Grace took the papers. Flint, if you go alone, they'll kill you. Probably. Then don't go. I have to. He looked at Emma, small and pale, on the table. She's dying because Sutton's forcing you to choose between your daughter and your future. That's not a choice. That's cruelty. And I'm done standing by while powerful men crush the innocent. He turned to leave. Grace caught his arm. James. He stopped. She never used his first name. Never. Come back, she said. Please, don't make me lose you too. Something shifted in his face. Grace, I know you think you owe your brother this, some grand gesture, some redemption. But you don't owe him your death. You owe him your life. Lived well, lived sober, lived for something that matters. She stepped closer. You matter, to me, to these girls. Don't throw that away. Flint looked at her for a long moment. His eyes were wet. I'll be careful, he said. That's not a promise to come back. It's the best I can do. He left before she could argue. Grace stood in the doorway watching him ride into the darkness, carrying their only hope in his saddlebags. Mrs. Chen appeared beside her. He's a good man. He's a fool. Same thing usually. She handed Grace a cup of something bitter. Give this to the girl every 4 hours. Keep her warm. Make her drink. And pray if you're the praying type. Grace took the cup. What if prayer doesn't work? Then you'll grieve, but at least you'll have tried. Mrs. Chen walked away. Boarding house rules. No drinking, no fighting, no men in the women's rooms. You break them, you leave. Understood. Grace carried the medicine to Emma, coaxed it down her throat, held her while she cried. Lily curled up beside them, exhausted, terrified, trying to be brave. Is Mr. Flint coming back? Lily whispered. I don't know, sweetheart. I hope he does. I like him. Me too. They slept in shifts. Grace woke every few hours to check Emma's breathing. Give medicine, change sweat-soaked blankets. By the 3rd day, the fever broke. Emma opened her eyes, looked around, smiled weakly. Mama, where are we? Grace kissed her forehead. Somewhere safe, baby. Where's Mr. Flint? Grace's throat tightened. He went to Denver. To help us. He'll come back, right? I hope so. But 4 days passed. Then 5. No word. No rider. No news. On the 6th day, a man arrived at the boarding house. Not Flint. A stranger, young, nervous, wearing a clerk's suit. Mrs. Morrison. Grace stood slowly. Yes. I'm from the territorial governor's office. He handed her a sealed envelope. Mr. Garrett asked me to deliver this. Grace's hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper covered in Flint's rough handwriting. Grace. The governor listened. Barely, but he listened. He's ordering an investigation into Consolidated's practices. It'll take weeks, maybe months. But Judge Holloway can't rule on the dispute until it's complete. You've got time. Sutton knows. He's furious. He'll come for you now, hard and fast. Don't stay in Ophir. Head back to the mine. Barricade. Wait. I'm staying in Denver. The governor wants me to testify. If I leave, Sutton will have me killed. If I stay, you'll be alone. I'm sorry. I promise to come back. I'm breaking that promise. But I'm not breaking the other one. I won't let you lose this fight. Trust me. One more time. Grace read it twice, then again. Her vision blurred. Ma'am. The clerk shifted nervously. He also sent this. He handed her a small leather pouch. Grace opened it. Inside were gold coins. 20 of them. Enough to survive the winter. Enough to hire men. Enough to fight. Where did he get this? She whispered. He didn't say. Just told me to make sure you received it. The clerk left. Grace stood in the boarding house parlor, holding Flint's letter, holding his money, holding the weight of everything he'd sacrificed to give her a chance. Lily appeared in the doorway. Mama? What's wrong? Nothing, baby. Everything's fine. But it wasn't fine. Flint was trapped in Denver testifying against men who would kill him for it. She was alone on a mountain with 2 daughters and a mine that Sutton would burn to the ground rather than lose. And somewhere between fear and fury, Grace Morrison made a decision. She wasn't running, wasn't hiding, wasn't waiting for men to decide her fate. She was going back to that mine, back to the silver her husband died for. And she was going to fight like hell to keep it. Sutton wanted a war. He'd get one. Grace folded Flint's letter, put the coins in her corset with the others, and started packing. Emma was well enough to ride. Lily was strong enough to help. And Grace was angry enough to take on Consolidated Silver single-handed if she had to. Get your things, girls, she said quietly. We're going home. They reached the mine at dusk on the 8th day. The cabin stood exactly as they'd left it, door shut, windows intact. But something felt wrong. Grace felt it in her spine the way animals sense storms. Stay on the horses, she told the girls. She dismounted slowly, rifle-ready eyes scanning the tree line. Nothing moved. No smoke from chimneys in the valley below. No birds calling. Just silence, thick and waiting. The cabin door swung open at her touch. Inside, everything was destroyed. Flowers scattered across the floor. Blankets shredded. Her husband's mining tools bent and broken. The stove kicked over ashes everywhere. And on the table, pinned with a knife, a note in neat handwriting, final warning. Leave or burn. Grace stood in the ruins, breathing carefully. Not crying. Not yet. Crying was weakness, and weak women lost their children to men like Sutton. Mama! Lily's voice trembled from the doorway. What happened? Sutton happened. Grace pulled the knife from the table, folded the note, put it in her pocket. Evidence. Come inside, girls. We need to clean this up before dark. But Mama, everything's broken. Then we'll fix it. Grace met her daughter's eyes. We don't run, Lily. Not from this. Not from anything. They worked until midnight. Grace salvaged what she could, a few unbroken dishes, some blankets the raiders had missed enough flour from the barrel to make bread if they were careful. Lily swept ashes. Emma, still weak but determined, sorted through scattered supplies. By the time they finished, the cabin looked almost livable again. Almost. Grace lay awake that night, rifle across her lap, listening. Every crack of timber made her jump. Every wind gust sounded like footsteps. The girls slept fitfully curled together for warmth and comfort. At dawn, Grace walked to the mine entrance. It was still intact, the raiders hadn't touched it. Either they didn't know about the silver, or Sutton wanted the mine working when he finally took it. Easier to steal a productive claim than a collapsed shaft. She stood at the entrance, remembering Flint's lessons. Never go in alone. Never go in without light. Never go in without telling someone where you are. But there was no one to tell. No one to help. Just her and 2 children and a mountain full of silver that might as well be on the moon for all the good it did them. Mrs. Morrison. Grace spun rifle up. A man stood 20 feet away, hands raised, no weapon visible. He was maybe 50, Mexican or Spanish, weathered face, kind eyes. Easy, senora. I'm not here to hurt you. Then why are you here? My name is Miguel Santos. I worked with your husband. He helped me once when Consolidated tried to claim jump my digging. I heard you were in trouble. He lowered his hands slowly. I came to help. Grace didn't lower the rifle. How did you hear? Miners talk. Word spreads. They're saying Sutton's going after you hard. Some of us remember what he did to the Martinez family, the Johnsons, the Chen brothers. Miguel's voice was quiet. We remember who stands up to Consolidated and who disappears. And you want to stand up. I want to repay a debt. Your husband saved my claim. I can't save his, but I can help his widow keep it. He gestured toward the mine. You need someone who knows how to extract ore safely. I know. I can teach you. Grace studied him. He looked honest, but so had the assayer before Sutton bought him. What do you want in return? 10% of whatever you pull out. Fair partnership. I provide labor and knowledge. You provide the claim and the courage. He smiled slightly. From what I hear, you've got plenty of the second part. I can't pay you until we actually extract something worth selling. I'm not asking for payment now. I'm asking for a chance to help, to stand against Sutton like your husband did. Miguel stepped closer. Senora, I have 6 children. Sutton pays my wages. If he finds out I'm helping you, I'll lose everything. But some things are worth losing jobs over. Your husband taught me that. Grace lowered the rifle. When can you start? Today. They started immediately. Miguel surveyed the shaft, checked the support beams, explained how to follow the vein without triggering collapses. Grace listened, asked questions, learned. Lily took notes in a careful hand. Emma watched, still pale, but improving daily. The silver runs deep, Miguel said, standing in the tunnel 50 feet down. Your husband barely scratched the surface. With proper technique, you could pull out 50 pounds a week, maybe more. How long would that take? To extract 6 hours a day, 2 people working. To process, that's harder. You need tools, chemicals, knowledge. The smelter in Silverton won't buy from you while Sutton's fighting your claim. We'll have to go to Uray, 30 miles south. Grace's heart sank. 30 miles with ore on pack mules? That's 3 days there and back. At least. But it's the only way. Miguel climbed back up the ladder. Unless you want to sit on silver, you can't sell. No. We extract, we sell, we survive. Grace followed him up. When can we start? After we shore up the entrance. Sutton's men probably damaged the supports when they trashed your cabin. We fix that first, or the whole thing comes down on our heads. They spent 3 days reinforcing timbers, replacing rotten beams, clearing rockfall. Miguel worked with quiet efficiency, teaching Grace and Lily as he went. Emma helped topside sorting tools, keeping watch, her strength returning slowly. On the 4th day they went down. The tunnel was narrow, cold water, dripping somewhere in the darkness. Miguel held the lamp high, showing Grace where to place the pickaxe, how to read the rock, when to stop before the vein ran out. "Here," he said. "Strike here." Grace swung. The pick bit into stone. Silver glittered in the lamplight. Again. She swung. Again. Again. Her arms burned. Her back screamed. Sweat poured down her face despite the cold. "Good. You're learning." Miguel set down his own pick. "Now we load it." They filled canvas bags with ore, 50 pounds, then 100, then 200. Hauled them up the ladder, one at a time. By sunset, they had 500 pounds of raw ore piled outside the mine entrance. Grace stood looking at it, hands bleeding, body shaking with exhaustion. 500 pounds. Maybe worth $300 once processed and sold. Maybe more if the silver content was high. It was a start. "Tomorrow we dig more," Miguel said. "Day after we take the first load to Ouray, you, me, and the mules. The girls stay here. I'm not leaving them alone." "Then we don't sell the ore. We sit on it until Sutton gets tired of waiting and burns this place to the ground with all of you inside." Miguel met her eyes. "Senora, you can't protect them and fight him at the same time. Choose." Grace looked at the cabin. Lily stood in the doorway, Emma beside her, both watching. So young, so vulnerable. And she was about to leave them alone on a mountain where Sutton's men prowled like wolves. "I'll talk to them," she said. That night, Grace sat the girls down by the fire. "I need to take the ore to Ouray. 3 days. Maybe 4 if the weather turns. Mr. Santos will come with me." "Who'll stay with us?" Emma asked. "No one. You'll be alone." Lily's face went white. "Mama, what if the bad men come back?" "Then you hide. There's a cache in the woods behind the cabin Mr. Santos showed me today. Supplies, water, blankets. If anyone comes, you run there. You stay quiet. You wait for me to come back." "And if you don't come back?" Grace pulled both girls close. "I will. I promise. But if something happens, if I'm not back in 5 days, you go to Mrs. Chen in Ophir. You tell her everything. She'll help you." "I'm scared, Mama." "I know, baby. I'm scared too. But we're doing this anyway. Because that silver is our future. Our way out. Our chance to live without Sutton's threats hanging over us." Grace kissed Emma's forehead, then Lily's. "You're Morrison girls. Your papa taught you to be brave. Show me I was right to believe in you." Lily straightened. "We can do it." "Emma." Emma nodded, tears on her cheeks. "We can do it." "That's my girls." They left at dawn. Grace, Miguel, and 4 mules loaded with ore. Lily and Emma stood in the cabin doorway, waving, trying to smile. Grace looked back once, memorizing their faces, then turned away before the tears came. The trail to Ouray wound through high passes and narrow canyons. Miguel led silent and watchful. Grace followed rifle-ready eyes, scanning for Sutton's men. They camped the first night in a box canyon, no fire, eating cold beans and hardtack. "You think Sutton knows where we're going?" Grace asked. "He knows. He always knows. Question is whether he tries to stop us or lets us make it to Ouray so he can steal the money on the way back." "Comforting." Miguel smiled slightly. "I'm not here to comfort you, Senora. I'm here to help you survive. Those are different things." "How did you survive all these years working for Consolidated?" "By being useful. By keeping my head down. By never giving Sutton a reason to notice me." He poked at the cold beans with his spoon. "Your husband was different. He fought. He made noise. He died for it." "Do you think I'm going to die for it too?" "Maybe. Probably. But you'll die standing up, which is more than most of us can say." Miguel set down his plate. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's the hard part." The hard part was a narrow trail along a cliff face, barely wide enough for the mule's 200-foot drop on one side. They moved slowly, carefully, Grace's heart in her throat, every time a mule's hoof slipped on loose rock. Halfway across, riders appeared ahead. 3 men blocking the trail rifles across their saddles. Grace recognized one, the man from Sutton's crew who'd circled her cabin, the one with the scar across his cheek. "Mrs. Morrison?" He smiled. "Going somewhere?" Grace stopped the mules. "Out of my way." "Can't do that. Mr. Sutton wants to talk to you, back in Silverton, about terms." "I'm not interested in his terms." "Didn't ask if you were interested, just said he wants to talk." The man nudged his horse forward. "Come peaceful, we'll make sure you get there safe. Come fighting well." He glanced at the cliff edge. Accidents happen on these trails. Miguel moved his hand toward his rifle. Grace caught his arm, shook her head slightly. "If I go back with you," she said carefully, "what happens to my ore?" "Consolidated will buy it. Fair price. Consider it a down payment on the claim." "And if I refuse?" "Then we take the ore anyway. And you." His smile widened. "Your choice, lady. Easy or hard?" Grace looked at the cliff drop, at Miguel's tense face, at the 3 rifles pointed at her chest. She thought about Lily and Emma alone at the cabin, about Flint trapped in Denver testifying, about her husband buried under rock and silver. "I'll go with you," she said. "But Miguel takes the ore to Ouray, sells it, brings the money back to my daughters. That's the deal." "No deal, lady. Sutton wants—" "I don't care what Sutton wants." Grace's voice was ice. "You take me. Miguel takes the ore. Or I ride this mule straight off that cliff right now and you explain to Sutton why his prize witness is dead at the bottom of a canyon." The man's smile faded. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Grace urged her mule toward the edge. One more step and they'd both go over. "Wait." The man raised a hand. "Jesus, lady, you're insane." "I'm a widow with nothing left to lose. There's a difference." Grace steadied the mule. "Do we have a deal?" The scarred man looked at his companions. They shrugged. Finally he nodded. "Fine. Santos takes the ore. You come with us, but if you try anything—" "I won't. I'm done running." Grace dismounted, handed Miguel her rifle. "Take care of the girls. Whatever happens, make sure they're safe." "Señora." "Go, Miguel. That's an order." Miguel's jaw tightened. But he took the lead rope, started down the trail toward Ouray, the mules following. Grace watched him disappear around a bend, carrying her only hope of paying for food, for supplies for survival. Then she turned to the scarred man. "Let's go see your boss." They rode back to Silverton in silence. Grace's hands weren't bound. Sutton's men were confident she wouldn't run. They were right. Running meant abandoning her daughters, meant giving up the mine, meant letting her husband's death be for nothing. So she rode steady, head high, remembering what Flint had taught her about mining, about survival, about fighting men who thought power made them untouchable. Sutton was waiting at the Consolidated office, a large building on Main Street that smelled like money and cigars. He stood when she entered, gestured to a chair, smiled like they were old friends. "Mrs. Morrison, thank you for coming. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has choices. You chose to fight, rather than accept my generous offer. Now we're here." He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, slid one toward her. "Drink. You look exhausted." Grace didn't touch it. "What do you want?" "To negotiate, reasonably, like adults." Sutton sat, sipped his whiskey. "You've impressed me. I'll admit it. Most widows would have taken my money and run. You stayed, fought, found an engineer willing to testify against me." His smile thinned. "That takes courage. Stupidity too, but courage nonetheless. If you're going to threaten me, just do it." "I'm not threatening you. I'm explaining reality." He leaned forward. "Governor's investigation will take months, maybe years. During that time, you can't profitably work your claim because I'll tie you up in legal challenges. You'll spend every penny on lawyers and surveys and court fees. Your daughters will starve. You'll lose everything. And in the end, I'll still get the mine. Or you'll get exposed for corruption and lose your company. Possibly. But your daughters will already be dead by then, so what's the victory? He set down his glass. I'm offering you a way out. Sell me the claim. Today. $10,000. Enough to start over somewhere Consolidated doesn't operate. Somewhere your girls can grow up safe. Grace was quiet for a long time. $10,000. A fortune. Enough to go back to Boston, buy a house, open a school, live without fear. All she had to do was give up. No, she said. Sutton's face hardened. Don't be a fool. I'm not. I'm being exactly what my husband raised me to be, someone who doesn't bow to bullies. Grace stood. You killed him, didn't you? The cave-in that crushed Thomas. You arranged it. Careful, Mrs. Morrison. Accusations like that require proof. I'll find it. Flint's testifying about how Consolidated operates. Other miners are starting to talk. Miguel Santos is spreading word about your threats. The newspapers in Denver are already asking questions. She met his eyes. You're going to lose Mr. Sutton. Maybe not today. Maybe not this month. But eventually people will see you for what you are. And when they do, I'll be there to watch Consolidated burn. Sutton stood slowly. I gave you a chance. Multiple chances. You rejected them all. So now we do this the hard way. Which means what? Which means your daughters are alone on that mountain. Accidents happen. Cabins catch fire. Children get lost in the woods and freeze. He walked to the window, looked out at Silverton's bustling streets. I'd hate for anything tragic to happen to them, but I can't control every miner in these hills. Some of them are careless. Some are cruel. And some owe me favors. Grace's blood went ice cold. If you touch my daughters, I won't touch them. I'll never touch them. But I also can't guarantee their safety if their mother insists on making enemies. Sutton turned back to her. Go home, Mrs. Morrison. Think about what you're risking. You have 24 hours to reconsider my offer. After that, I stop being polite. He nodded to the scarred man. Escort Mrs. Morrison back to her claim. Make sure she arrives safely. Grace walked out, legs shaking, fury burning so hot she thought she might spontaneously combust. Behind her, Sutton's laughter followed, soft and mocking. They gave her a horse, rode with her halfway to the mine, then turned back, leaving her alone on the trail. Grace rode hard, fear clawing at her chest. 24 hours. Sutton had given her daughters 24 hours before his threats became action. She reached the cabin at midnight. The door was open. Grace's heart stopped. Lily Emma. Silence. She dismounted, rifle ready, moving toward the dark doorway. Girls, if you're hiding, come out. It's Mama. Nothing. Grace stepped inside. The cabin was empty. Blankets gone. Supplies gone. No sign of struggle. No blood. Just emptiness. On the table, another note. They're safe, for now, accept the offer. Grace stood in the dark cabin, holding the note, shaking so hard she couldn't breathe. He took them. Sutton took her daughters, took the only things in the world that mattered. She sank to the floor, still holding the rifle, still holding the note. Alone. Completely alone. And somewhere in the darkness, she heard herself laugh. Not humor, something else, something sharp and jagged and broken. Because Sutton had made a mistake. He'd thought taking her daughters would make her surrender. He was wrong. Grace Morrison stood up, checked her rifle, reloaded, walked back outside and mounted her horse. She wasn't going to Ouray, wasn't going to Denver, wasn't going anywhere except Consolidated's office to put a bullet through Andrew Sutton's skull. She'd lost her husband to Consolidated's greed. She wouldn't lose her daughters, too. Even if it meant burning the whole company down, even if it meant hanging for murder, even if it meant destroying herself in the process. Sutton wanted war. He'd started one he couldn't finish. Grace rode toward Silverton, rifle across her lap, moonlight turning the trail to silver. Behind her, the mine stood empty and dark. The silver in its veins glittered in the lamplight, worth $50,000 worth, $100,000 worth, everything and nothing at all. Because Grace Morrison had just learned the hardest lesson of the frontier: you couldn't negotiate with men like Sutton. You couldn't reason with them or appeal to their better nature. You could only fight them, and keep fighting until someone stopped breathing. She reached Silverton as dawn broke. The town was stirring, miners heading to shift change, prostitutes stumbling home, shopkeepers opening shutters. Grace rode straight to Consolidated's office. The door was locked. She kicked it open. Inside, a clerk looked up, startled. "Ma'am, you can't—" "Where is he?" "Mr. Sutton isn't here. He's—" Grace raised the rifle, pointed it at the clerk's face. "Where is he?" The clerk's hands shot up. "Railroad camp 2 miles north. He went to inspect the new line." "Please don't shoot." Grace lowered the rifle, turned, walked out. Behind her, the clerk was probably running for the sheriff, raising alarms, calling for help. She didn't care. Let them come. Let the whole territory come. She was getting her daughters back or dying in the attempt. The railroad camp was chaos, hundreds of workers laying track, driving spikes, hauling ties. Grace rode through them like an avenging angel, rifle, ready eyes scanning for Sutton's expensive coat. She found him standing beside a surveyor's station, reviewing plans with his foreman. He looked up as she approached, saw the rifle, saw her face. For the first time since she'd met him, Andrew Sutton looked genuinely surprised. "Mrs. Morrison, this is unexpected." Grace dismounted, walked forward, until the rifle barrel was 3 feet from his chest. Workers scattered. Foreman shouted. Someone ran for help. "Where are my daughters?" Grace's voice was dead calm. "Safe. I told you. They're perfectly safe." "Where?" "Silverton. Boarding house. Mrs. Pritchard is watching them. They're fed, warm, unharmed. I'm not a monster, Mrs. Morrison. I don't hurt children." "You threatened them." "I pointed out reality. That's different." Sutton didn't back away from the rifle. "You're not going to shoot me." "Yes, I am." "No, you're not. Because if you kill me, you'll hang. Your daughters will be orphans. The mine will revert to Consolidated anyway. You'll lose everything you're fighting for." He stepped closer. "Lower the rifle. Go get your girls. Take them home. And think very carefully about whether this fight is worth their lives." Grace's finger tightened on the trigger. 1 pound of pressure. That's all it would take. 1 shot. Sutton dead. The world slightly better. But he was right. If she killed him here in front of witnesses, she'd hang. And her daughters would be alone. She lowered the rifle. Sutton smiled. "Smart woman. I knew you'd see reason eventually. This isn't over." "Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet." He turned back to his plans. "Go home, Mrs. Morrison, before I change my mind about being merciful." Grace mounted her horse, rode back to Silverton, her whole body shaking with rage and shame. She'd backed down. Given in. Let Sutton win. The boarding house stood on a quiet street. Grace tied her horse, walked up the steps, knocked. Mrs. Pritchard answered, the same woman who'd turned them away that first night. "Your daughters are in the parlor," she said coldly. "Mr. Sutton paid for 3 days' lodging. After that, you're on your own." Grace pushed past her. Lily and Emma sat on a sofa, holding each other, faces pale but unharmed. When they saw Grace, they ran to her, sobbing, clinging. "Mama." "It's okay, babies. It's okay. I've got you." "The men came at night," Lily said through tears. "They said we had to go with them or they'd burn the cabin. We didn't know what to do. We were so scared." "You did the right thing." Grace held them both. "You stayed safe. That's all that matters." They rode back to the mine together, slow and quiet. The cabin was still standing, still empty. Grace got the girls inside, built a fire, made tea from the last of their supplies. "Are we going to lose the mine, Mama?" Emma asked. Grace looked at her daughters, so brave, so trusting, believing she could protect them from monsters like Sutton. "I don't know, baby." What are we going to do? That was the question. What could she do? Sutton had all the power, the money, the connections, the willingness to threaten children. She had nothing except rage and a rifle and a mind she couldn't work without putting her daughters in danger. "We survive," Grace said finally, "one day at a time, like we've been doing." But that night, lying awake with Lily and Emma curled against her, Grace Morrison made a decision. She couldn't beat Sutton alone, couldn't fight Consolidated single-handed, couldn't protect her daughters and work the mine and testify in court all at once. She needed help, real help. Not just Miguel and his quiet rebellion, not just Flint trapped in Denver. She needed the one thing Sutton couldn't buy and couldn't threaten. She needed the truth, loud and public and impossible to ignore. At dawn, Grace started writing. Everything. Every threat Sutton had made. Every bribe he'd paid. Every miner who'd died in suspicious collapses. Every widow left penniless. Every claim stolen. She wrote for 8 hours straight, filling pages with cramped handwriting documenting 4 years of Consolidated's corruption. When she finished, she had 40 pages. A book of crimes. "What's that, Mama?" Lily asked. "Justice," Grace said. "Or the start of it anyway." She sealed the pages in an oilskin packet, addressed it to the Denver newspapers, to the territorial governor, to every authority she could think of who might care about one widow's accusations. Then she gave it to Miguel when he returned from Ouray with $300 from the ore sale. "Take this to Denver," she said. "Find Flint. Give him this and the money. Tell him I need him to make sure this reaches the right people. People Sutton can't buy." Miguel looked at the packet. "If Sutton finds out I'm carrying this, he'll kill you. I know. That's why I'm asking, not ordering. You can refuse." Miguel was quiet for a long moment. Then he took the packet. "Your husband saved my claim. I told you I'd repay that debt." He tucked the pages into his coat. "I'll get this to Flint, and I'll come back, with help if I can find it. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet, Senora. Thank me when we win." He rode away at midnight. Grace watched him go, carrying her last hope in his saddlebag. Then she went inside, barred the door, and waited. For Sutton's next move. For Flint's response. For the moment when everything either came together or fell completely apart. Outside the mountain loomed dark and enormous. The mine entrance gaped like a mouth. And somewhere in Silverton, Andrew Sutton sat in his office planning his next attack. Grace cleaned her rifle, checked her ammunition, taught Lily to load, taught Emma to shoot, because when Sutton came and he would come, she'd be ready. 3 days of silence. Then the riders came. Grace saw them from the cabin window, 8 men, maybe 10, moving up the trail in the gray morning light. Not Sutton's usual crew. These were different. Harder. The kind of men who got paid to make problems disappear. "Girls, get to the cache. Now." Lily grabbed Emma's hand, started for the back door. Grace caught Lily's shoulder. "If shooting starts, you run. Don't look back. Don't wait for me. You go straight to Ophir and find Mrs. Chen. Understand?" "Mama. Understand." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, Mama. Good girl. Now go." They disappeared into the timber. Grace watched until she couldn't see them anymore, then turned back to the window. The riders were closer now. She could make out faces. The scarred man led them. Behind him, others she didn't recognize. Men with dead eyes and patient hands. Grace checked her rifle. 12 shots. She had another rifle hidden under the floorboards and her husband's pistol in her belt. Maybe 30 rounds total. Against 10 men. The math was simple. She was going to die. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt almost peaceful. No more running. No more fear. Just one last fight and then rest. The riders stopped 50 feet from the cabin. Scarred man dismounted, walked forward alone, hands visible and empty. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm hoping we can talk before this gets ugly." Grace opened the door, stepped onto the porch, rifle loose in her hands. "Talk fast." "Mr. Sutton sent us with a final offer. $20,000, cash, today. You sign the claim over, take your girls and leave Colorado. No hard feelings, clean break. And if I refuse, then we're authorized to take possession of the property, by force if necessary." He gestured at the cabin. "Your daughters aren't here. I checked. That's smart. Shows you understand what's about to happen." "You're going to kill me." "Only if you make us. Mr. Sutton would prefer you alive. Witnesses complicate things, but he's done being patient." The scarred man pulled papers from his coat. "Sign these. Transfer the deed. Walk away. Live to see your girls grow up." Grace looked at the papers. Legal documents probably drawn up by Sutton's lawyers, probably worthless once she was dead anyway. Because men like Sutton didn't leave loose ends. Even if she signed, even if she left, he'd find a way to silence her eventually. "How much is he paying you?" she asked. $50. Each." "That's all $50 to murder a widow." The scarred man shrugged. "It's honest work, better than mining." "It's evil." "Maybe, but evil pays better." He held out the papers. "Last chance, Mrs. Morrison." Grace raised the rifle, pointed it at his chest. "Get off my land." He sighed. "Figured you'd say that." He stepped back. The other riders dismounted, spread out rifles ready. Professional, efficient. They'd done this before. Grace fired. The scarred man dove sideways. Her bullet took the man behind him in the shoulder, spun him around. The others opened fire bullets, chewing into the cabin wall, splintering wood, shattering windows. Grace dropped behind the doorframe, reloaded, fired blind through the broken window. Heard someone scream. Reloaded again. The cabin was coming apart around her, each bullet finding wood and glass and stone. A voice shouted, "Flank her around the back." Grace abandoned the front door, ran to the rear window. 2 men were circling toward the cache where her daughters were hiding. She fired twice. Both men dropped. Not dead, she could hear them cursing, but hurt enough to slow down. More bullets hammered the cabin. Grace reloaded with shaking hands. 5 shots left in this rifle. The other rifle was across the room. The pistol had 6 rounds. 11 shots total against 6 men still standing. The shooting stopped. Silence, heavy and waiting. "Mrs. Morrison?" The scarred man's voice came from somewhere left of the cabin. "You got 2 of my men. I'm impressed. But you're out of time. We're coming in. You can die fighting or die running. Either way, you're dying today." Grace looked around the cabin. Her home. Her husband's dream. Everything they'd fought for reduced to splinters and broken glass. She thought about Thomas buried under mountain rock. About Flint trapped in Denver. About Miguel riding through the night with her accusations. About Lily and Emma hiding in the woods, listening to gunfire, knowing their mother was dying. And she thought, not yet, not like this, not. Grace grabbed the second rifle, kicked open the back door, and ran. Bullets chased her into the timber. She dove behind a fallen log, fired back twice, heard someone curse. Then she was up and running again, deeper into the forest, away from the cabin, away from her daughter's hiding place, leading them away, making herself the target. She ran for 5 minutes, maybe 10 lungs, burning legs, screaming. Behind her the men followed, crashing through brush, shouting directions. Professional killers who knew how to track, how to hunt, how to corner prey. Grace reached a clearing, stopped, turned. 3 men emerged from the trees, rifles raised. "End of the line, lady." She raised her rifle. Empty. She'd forgotten to reload during the run. The pistol was in her belt, but she'd never draw it in time. This was it. This was how Grace Morrison died. Shot in a clearing by men who'd forget her name by sunset. She reached for the pistol anyway, because if she was dying fighting. A gunshot cracked. One of the men fell, blood blooming on his chest. Another shot. The second man dropped. The third man spun, firing wildly at the trees. A bullet took him in the throat. He fell choking. Grace stood, frozen pistol half drawn, staring at 3 dead men. Flint stepped out of the timber rifle, smoking face gray with exhaustion. "You're late," Grace said. "Had to testify first. Governor's a talker." He reloaded calmly like he killed men every day. "Where are the girls?" "Cache behind the cabin. 3 more men were heading there when I ran." "Then we'd better hurry." They moved fast. Flint leading, Grace following. More gunshots ahead. Grace's heart stopped. If they'd found the girls, if they'd hurt them. They burst into the clearing behind the cabin. The scarred man and his 2 remaining men stood over the cache entrance, rifles pointed down. "Come out, little girls. We just want to talk." Flint shot the scarred man in the back. He fell forward dead before he hit ground. The other 2 men turned. Flint shot one. Grace drew her pistol, shot the other. They dropped together, a tangle of limbs and blood. Silence. Grace ran to the cache, tore the branches away. "Lily, Emma, it's safe, come out." 2 small faces appeared in the darkness. Pale. Terrified. Alive. Grace pulled them out, held them, sobbed into their hair. "It's okay. It's over. You're safe." Lily clung to her. "Mama, you're bleeding." Grace looked down. Blood soaked her sleeve. She hadn't even felt the bullet. Adrenaline and fear had numbed everything. Flint appeared beside her, already tearing strips from his shirt. "Sit down. Let me look." The other men. Dead. All of them. Miguel's coming up the trail with 20 miners from Ouray. They heard about the investigation, heard about Sutton's threats. Decided to stand with you. He tied the makeshift bandage tight. "You're lucky. Bullet went through clean. You'll live." "How did you get here so fast?" "Miguel found me 3 days ago. Showed me your papers. We rode straight back, gathering people along the way." Flint met her eyes. "Grace, your testimony reached the governor. He's issuing arrest warrants for Sutton and 3 of his foremen. Consolidated's board is moving to remove him. It's over." Grace stared at him. "What?" "You won. The corruption's exposed. The newspapers ran your story. The territorial legislature is calling hearings. Sutton's finished. But he sent these men to kill me. Last desperate move. He knew he was losing everything. Figured if you were dead, the case would collapse." Flint looked at the bodies scattered around the clearing. He was wrong. Grace sat on the ground, suddenly exhausted. 10 men. He sent 10 men to murder me over a mine. Not just a mine. Pride. Power. Control. Flint knelt beside her. Men like Sutton don't accept defeat. They burn everything down rather than lose. You survived that. Most people don't. Lily and Emma pressed against Grace's sides. She wrapped her arms around them, feeling their hearts beat against her ribs. Alive. All of them alive. Miguel emerged from the trees with his promised miners, rough men, hard men, men who'd lost claims or brothers or dignity to Consolidated's greed. They looked at the bodies, at Grace, bleeding on the ground, at Flint, standing guard with his rifle. "Señora," Miguel said quietly, "you need a doctor. I need my cabin fixed, and my mine working, and my daughters fed." Grace stood slowly. "The doctor can wait." "Grace." "I said he can wait." She looked at the miners. "You came to help, then help. Get these bodies out of here. Fix my cabin. Shore up my mine entrance. I'm not abandoning this claim, not after what it cost." The miners exchanged glances. Then, one by one, they nodded. They worked through the afternoon and into the night. Repairs on the cabin, on the hut, new timber for the mine. Someone rode to Silverton for supplies, came back with food and medicine and news. "Sheriff arrested Sutton an hour ago. Governor's warrant came through on the telegraph. Consolidated's office is shut down. Federal marshals are coming from Denver to take him to trial. Grace sat on the cabin steps, arm bandaged. Daughters beside her listening to justice arrive like a distant storm. "It's really over?" Emma asked. "The fighting is. The rest is just paperwork." Grace looked at Flint standing nearby with his rifle. "What happens now?" "Now you work your mine, extract your silver, sell it legally, build your life." He sat beside her. "Now you become the thing Sutton was terrified of. A successful woman who doesn't need powerful men to survive." "I needed you. Temporarily. You won't forever." He smiled slightly. "You'll hire miners, build a company, maybe even buy out Consolidated's assets when they liquidate. Turn this claim into an empire." "I don't want an empire. I want my daughters safe and fed. That's all." "Then you'll have that. Finally." Grace leaned against him without thinking. He stiffened, then relaxed, put an arm around her shoulders. Lily and Emma watched, said nothing, but Emma smiled. 2 days later, the federal marshals arrived with arrest warrants for Sutton's foreman and affidavits from a dozen miners willing to testify. Grace gave her own testimony, 4 hours of detailed accusations, documented threats, witnessed crimes. The lead marshal wrote it all down with grim efficiency. "Ma'am, you understand, you'll need to testify in Denver. Probably multiple times. Defense will try to tear you apart on the stand." "Let them try." The marshal almost smiled. "Yes, ma'am. I expect you'll do just fine." Sutton's trial took 3 months. Grace traveled to Denver twice, testified both times, faced down lawyers who called her a liar and a gold digger, and worse. She stood in the witness box and recited every threat, every bribe, every murdered miner. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Found Sutton guilty on 14 counts of fraud, corruption, and conspiracy to commit murder. The judge sentenced him to 20 years in territorial prison. Grace sat in the courtroom gallery, Flint beside her, and felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just bone-deep exhaustion and the quiet knowledge that her husband's death finally meant something. "You did it," Flint whispered. "We did it." "No. This was you. I just helped." He squeezed her hand. "Thomas would be proud." Grace's throat tightened. "I hope so." They returned to the mine 3 days before Christmas. Snow covered the mountains, deep and white and clean. The cabin stood solid, newly repaired, smoke rising from the chimney. Inside, Miguel had left supplies, flour, coffee, salt, even a small bag of candy for the girls. "He's a good man," Grace said. "He respects you." "They all do." Flint built up the fire. "You're a legend now. The widow who took down Consolidated Silver. People are writing songs about you." "That's ridiculous." "That's the frontier. We love a good revenge story." He handed her coffee. "What are you going to do now?" "Really?" Grace looked at her daughters, playing by the fire, laughing for the first time in months. Looked at the mine entrance, dark and promising. Looked at Flint, steady and sober and alive. "I'm going to work my claim, hire Miguel full-time, maybe a few other miners, extract enough silver to live on, build a real house, send my girls to school." She paused. "And I'd like you to stay, as my engineer, fair wages, partnership if you want it." Flint was quiet for a long time. "Grace, I don't deserve—" "Yes, you do. You saved my life, my daughters' lives. You stood up when everyone else walked away. That deserves more than I can ever pay." She met his eyes. "But it's not just about debt. It's about—" She stopped. Couldn't say it. Didn't know how. Flint smiled. "About partnership." "Yes, partnership." "Then I accept." He held out his hand. "Partners." Grace shook. His grip was warm and steady and real. That night, after the girls were asleep, Grace and Flint sat outside watching the stars. The mountain was silent except for wind in the pines and water in the creek. Peaceful, almost perfect. "I'm still angry," Grace said quietly. About Thomas. About how he died. About everything Sutton stole. You have a right to be angry. Does it ever go away, the anger? I don't know. Ask me in another 4 years. Flint was quiet for a moment. But I think maybe it transforms. Becomes something else. Determination. Purpose. The fuel that keeps you moving when everything else says quit. That sounds exhausting. It is, but it's better than drowning. Grace looked at him. Really looked. Saw the man behind the trauma, the engineer behind the drunk, the friend behind the guilt. Thank you, she said, for coming back, for fighting, for everything. Thank you for giving me a reason to. They sat in comfortable silence. Inside, Emma coughed once, then settled. Lily murmured in her sleep. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. Grace thought about her husband, about whether he'd forgive her for moving forward, for letting another man into their lives, for choosing survival over grief. Then she thought, he'd want me happy. He'd want the girls safe. He'd want this. And she let herself believe it. The mine produced $30,000 in silver over the next year. Grace hired 5 miners, built a proper house, sent both girls to school in Silverton. She became a fixture in town, the widow who'd beaten Consolidated, who'd rebuilt her life from ashes and rage. People respected her, some feared her. All remembered what happened when you tried to take what was hers. Flint stayed. Not in the house, he still couldn't quite bring himself to sleep near children, but in a small cabin he built 50 yards away. Close enough to help. Far enough to breathe. He and Grace worked the mine together, extracted silver together, made decisions together. Partnership, like she'd said. Nothing more. At least that's what they told themselves. One evening in late spring, Grace found him at his brother's grave. She'd never asked where it was, but she knew he visited it sometimes. Knew he still carried that weight. You talk to him, she asked. Sometimes. Mostly I apologize. For what? For surviving when he didn't. Flint touched the wooden cross. For being happy. For moving on. For forgetting what he looked like unless I concentrate really hard. That's not forgetting, that's healing. Doesn't feel like healing. Feels like betrayal. Grace sat beside him. My husband's been dead 3 years. Most days I can't remember the sound of his voice. I have to look at old letters to remember how he wrote. Sometimes I dream about him, and he has your face instead. She paused. That feels like betrayal too. But I don't think it is. I think it's survival. And I think Thomas would understand. Just like Daniel would. Flint looked at her. Grace. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just saying you don't have to apologize to ghosts for being alive. They'd want us happy. Both of them. That's what love is. I don't know if I remember how to be happy. Neither do I. Maybe we figure it out together. She walked back toward the house. Flint stayed at the grave for another hour, talking to his brother, asking permission for something he couldn't quite name. When he returned to his cabin, Grace was waiting on his porch. The girls are asleep, she said. And I made coffee. Thought you might want company. I'd like that. They sat together drinking terrible coffee, watching the stars wheel overhead. Not touching, not speaking, just being. And somewhere between midnight and dawn, Grace Morrison realized she was falling in love again. Not the desperate, passionate love of youth, but something quieter, steadier. Built on shared trauma and mutual respect, and the simple fact that they'd both survived things that should have killed them. She didn't say anything, neither did Flint. But she thought he knew, and she thought maybe that was enough, for now. The mine thrived, the girls grew. Flint stayed sober. Grace built her empire piece by piece, not the empire Flint had joked about, but something smaller and more real. A working claim, a profitable business, a family. 1 year became 2, 2 became 3. Life developed a rhythm work, and meals, and laughter, and occasional visits to Denver for the ongoing legal battles as Consolidated's assets were liquidated and distributed. Grace bought some of those assets. Water rights, timber claims, a stamping mill. She paid fair prices and hired fair wages and treated her workers like humans instead of equipment. People noticed. Other mining companies noticed. Within 5 years, Grace Morrison was one of the most successful independent operators in Colorado Territory. Within 10, she was wealthier than Sutton had ever been. But she never forgot where she started. Never forgot the terror of that first night, rejected and desperate, watching her daughters freeze. Never forgot the taste of poverty, of powerlessness, of a world designed to crush women who dared claim space. She used her wealth carefully. Bought failing claims from desperate miners at fair prices. Loaned money at reasonable rates. Hired widows and orphans. Built housing for families. Started a school. Became the thing Sutton had tried to destroy, a powerful woman who made the frontier better instead of extracting until nothing remained. And through it all, Flint was there. Engineering, advising, standing beside her when she needed support and stepping back when she needed space. They never married, never even discussed it, but everyone in Silverton knew they were partners in every way that mattered. Lily graduated from school at 16, went to college in Denver, came back to run the company's finances. Emma became a teacher, opened her own school in Silverton, taught miners' children to read. Both girls remembered the man who'd saved them. Both visited his cabin sometimes, brought him books, asked advice, treated him like family. "You're good with them," Grace said one evening, watching Flint explain engineering principles to Lily. "They're good kids. You raised them right." "We raised them right." Flint looked at her. "Grace, don't argue. You've been here for 12 years. You taught them to shoot, to track, to think. You're family. Accept it. I'm the hired help. You're my partner. There's a difference." "Is there?" Grace smiled. "I'm still deciding." He laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was rusty but real. That night, for the first time since Eleanor and Daniel died, James Garrett slept in a house instead of a cabin, in a real bed instead of a rope frame, under the same roof as children instead of hiding from them. Grace didn't ask why he finally came inside. Didn't need to. Some things you didn't question. You just accepted as the gift they were. Morning came soft and golden. Grace woke to find Flint already gone from the house, but his coffee cup sat on the table still warm. Through the window, she saw him working on the new shaft entrance, reinforcing beams, with the same careful precision he'd brought to everything for 12 years. 12 years. Sometimes it felt like yesterday, sometimes like a lifetime ago. Lily appeared in the doorway, 28, now sharp-eyed and confident. "Mama, the accountant's here from Denver. Says we need to discuss expansion. Tell him I'll be there in an hour. He says it's urgent." "Everything's urgent with accountants." Grace poured coffee. "How's the stamping mill running?" "Perfectly. Miguel's crew pulled another 1,000 pounds last week. The Ouray contracts are solid through next year." Lily studied her mother. "When are you going to marry him?" Grace nearly dropped her cup. "What? Mr. Flint, when are you going to marry him? You've been dancing around each other for over a decade. Emma and I have a bet going." "That's inappropriate." "That's honest." Lily smiled. "Mama, you're not fooling anyone. The way you look at him, the way he looks at you. You're already married in every way except the legal one. Why not make it official?" "Because marriage is complicated. Because I was married once and lost him. Because Flint lost his whole family and barely survived it. Because—" Grace stopped. "Because I'm afraid." "Of what?" "Of losing him too. Of being happy and having it ripped away again." Grace set down her cup. "Your father died chasing this mine. Flint's brother died in a collapse. Everyone I've loved has been destroyed by silver and greed and mountains. Maybe I'm not supposed to have more than what I've already got." Lily reached across the table, took her mother's hand. "Or maybe you're supposed to grab happiness when you find it. Papa would want that. Daniel would want that. And Mr. Flint definitely wants that, even if he's too scared to say it." "You're very wise for 28. I learned from the best." Lily stood. Talk to him, Mama, before you're both too old to enjoy it." She left. Grace sat alone with her coffee thinking about fear and love and the difference between surviving and living. The accountant wanted to buy another claim, the old consolidated property, up for auction after the company's final liquidation. Prime location, solid infrastructure, $20,000. "It's a bargain," he said, spreading papers across Grace's desk. "With your operation, you could have it profitable in 6 months. Or I could overextend and lose everything." Grace studied the numbers. How much capital would it require? $30,000 initial investment. Another $10,000 for labor and equipment. $40,000. Grace had it. Barely. But spending that much would leave nothing for emergencies, for the girls' futures, for the safety net she'd built so carefully. "I need to think about it." "Mrs. Morrison, this property won't last. 3 other companies are interested." "Then one of them can have it." Grace stood. "I didn't build this business by rushing into bad decisions. I'll give you my answer in a week." The accountant left, frustrated. Grace walked outside, found Flint measuring timber. "You heard?" she asked. "Hard not to. Man talks loud." Flint marked a beam, set down his pencil. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking 40,000 is a lot of money to risk on maybe." "True, but you've built your whole life on maybe. Came here with $12 and 2 daughters. Look at you now." "That's different. Then I had nothing to lose. Now I have everything." Grace sat on a stack of lumber. "What if I fail? What if I overextend and it all collapses?" "Then you'll rebuild, like you always do." Flint sat beside her. "Grace, you're the most capable person I know. If you want that property, you'll make it work. If you don't want it, that's fine too. But don't let fear make the decision." Says the man who wouldn't sleep in a house for 12 years. Exactly. I know what fear costs. Don't let it cost you this. Grace was quiet for a long moment. "If I buy it, I'll need a full-time engineer. Someone I trust completely. Someone who knows mining and people and how to build things that last." "Miguel's good." "I'm not talking about Miguel." Flint looked at her. "Grace, I'm offering you a real partnership. Equal stake in the company. Your name on the papers. Not hired help, not charity. A true partner in everything." She met his eyes. "But that means staying. Forever. No running when things get hard. No disappearing when fear gets loud. You'd be committed. To the business. To the girls. To you. To all of it. The whole messy, complicated thing." Grace's hands shook. "And I know that's terrifying. I know you're still carrying guilt about Daniel and Eleanor. I know you think you don't deserve happiness. But James, you've been sober for 12 years. You've built a good life. You've earned the right to keep living it." Flint stood, walked to the edge of the property. Below, Silverton spread across the valley, bigger now, more civilized, but still rough at the edges. Still a frontier town where anything could happen. "I dream about them sometimes," he said quietly. "Daniel and Eleanor. They're standing in a mine shaft, and I'm signing papers, and they're screaming for me to stop. But I can't hear them. I just keep signing. And then the mountain falls, and I wake up. How often? Every night for the first 5 years. Now maybe once a month. But it never really goes away. The guilt. The feeling that I'm living a life I don't deserve while they're—" He stopped. "While they're gone." Grace walked to him, stood close enough to feel his warmth. "What if you do deserve it? What if survival isn't punishment? What if Daniel and Eleanor would want you happy, would want you loved, would want you to build something beautiful out of the wreckage?" "I don't know if I believe that." "Then believe me. I'm telling you, you're worth loving, worth building a life with, worth taking a chance on." She took his hand. "I'm not asking you to forget them. I'm asking you to honor them by living well, by choosing joy instead of drowning, by being the man they loved instead of the ghost you've been pretending to be." Flint's eyes were wet. "Grace." "Say yes, James. Please, just say yes." He pulled her close, held her like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth. Yes, Grace kissed him, soft at first, then deeper. 12 years of waiting, of dancing around each other, of being afraid to name what they'd built together. All of it pouring into one moment of finally letting go. When they pulled apart, Flint was smiling. So partners. Partners. In everything. Even the terrifying parts. Especially those. They told the girls that evening. Lily cheered. Emma cried happy tears. Miguel, who'd come for dinner, raised his coffee cup in toast. "About damn time," he said. "We've all been waiting for you two stubborn fools to figure it out." "Language?" Grace said automatically. "Senora, you face down Consolidated Silver. I think you can handle a little cursing." Miguel grinned. "So when's the wedding?" Grace and Flint exchanged glances. "We haven't discussed spring," Lily said firmly. "Before you both lose your nerve." Lily. "Mama, you're 46. Mr. Flint's 52. You don't have forever. Get married. Be happy. Stop wasting time." Emma nodded. "She's right. Life's too short to be scared." Grace looked at Flint. He shrugged. "They make a good argument." "Fine. Spring. Small ceremony. Nothing fancy." "Deal." Flint squeezed her hand under the table. That night, after everyone left, they sat on the porch watching stars wheel overhead. The same stars that had watched Grace arrive desperate and freezing. The same stars that had witnessed every fight, every loss, every small victory. "I'm still scared," Grace admitted. "Me too." "What if something happens? What if—" "Then we'll handle it. Together." Flint kissed her forehead. "Grace, we've survived things that should have killed us. I think we can manage being happy." "You make it sound easy." "It's not easy, but it's worth trying." They married in April, just as the aspens leafed out and the snowmelt turned creeks into rivers. Small ceremony like Grace wanted, just the girls, Miguel and his family, a few minors, the Reverend from Silverton. Grace wore a simple dress, blue instead of white, practical. Flint wore his best shirt, hands shaking as he slipped a gold band onto her finger. "I promise," he said quietly, "to stand with you, to work beside you, to never let fear make me a coward again." "I promise," Grace replied, "to trust you, to build this life with you, to choose happiness even when it's terrifying." The Reverend pronounced them married. Lily and Emma hugged them both. Miguel broke out whiskey he'd been saving for 12 years. "To the widow who beat Consolidated," he toasted. "And the engineer who saved himself. May you both live long enough to bore your grandchildren with these stories." They drank. They danced. They celebrated until the stars came out. Later, alone in the house they'd built together, Grace and Flint lay in the darkness holding hands. "Are you happy?" she asked. "I think so. It's been so long I barely recognize the feeling." He rolled toward her. "Are you terrified?" "But yes. Happy." "Good." They fell asleep like that, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage and built something stronger than grief. The company thrived. Grace bought the Consolidated property. Flint engineered it, turned it profitable in 5 months instead of 6. Within 2 years, Morrison Garrett Mining was the largest independent operation in the territory. But Grace never forgot where she'd started. Every winter she hired on widows who needed work, paid them fair wages, gave them a chance to rebuild. "You're running a charity, not a company," the accountant complained. "I'm running both. The profit margins prove it." Grace didn't look up from her ledgers. "Any other concerns?" "Just that your competitors think you're soft, that you're exploiting your own tragedy for publicity." "Let them think what they want. I'm making money and helping people. If that makes me soft, I'll wear the label proudly." The accountant left. Flint, who'd been listening from the doorway, smiled. "You're terrifying when you're right, you know that. I learned from experience. Being right is the only thing men like Sutton understand." "Sutton's still in prison." "Good. Hope he rots there. Grace set down her pen. How's the new shaft? Stable. We'll start extracting next week. Should pull 50,000 in silver by year's end. 50,000. Grace shook her head. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. That we built this. That we survived. Surviving was the easy part. Building was harder. Flint crossed to her desk, kissed the top of her head. But we did it. We did. Lily married at 30, a banker's son from Denver, who treated her like an equal and never once asked her to give up the family business. Emma stayed single, dedicated to her school shaping young minds the way Grace had once shaped hers. Both girls thrived. Both girls remembered. Both girls told their own children about the grandmother who'd beaten Consolidated Silver with nothing but rage and determination and a drunk engineer's help. Was she really that brave? Lily's daughter asked one afternoon. Grace, 60, now gray-haired but still sharp-eyed, smiled. I was really that desperate. Bravery came later. But you fought all those men. You testified against Mr. Sutton. You built this whole company. I did what I had to do. Any mother would have done the same. That's not true, Grandma. Most mothers would have given up. Grace looked at Flint, 72, now moving slower, but still steady, still sober, still hers. I had help, she said. That's the secret. None of us survive alone. We find people worth fighting for, and we hold on. Is that why you married Grandpa Flint? Part of it. Mostly I married him because he made terrible coffee and someone needed to teach him properly. Flint laughed from across the room. Lies. My coffee's fine. Your coffee's awful. Always has been. And yet you kept drinking it. Because it was yours. Their granddaughter watched them smiling. You really love each other. Yes, Grace said simply. We really do. The years passed. Grace and Flint grew old together working the mine until their bodies said stop, then transitioning to advisory roles, while Lily and Emma ran the daily operations. The company expanded, survived market crashes, weathered strikes and disasters. But through it all, the core remained. The cabin Grace had fought to keep. The mine Thomas had died for. The silver that had cost so much blood and fear and determination. And the family that had been forged from loss and transformed into something beautiful. One evening, 40 years after that first desperate night, Grace and Flint sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and red. Both were old now, worn by work and time and living. But both were here. Both were alive. Do you ever regret it? Grace asked. Staying building this life instead of running? Every day for the first year. Every week for the second, never again after that. Flint took her hand. You... Not once. Grace squeezed his fingers. Not even when it was hardest. You and the girls and this place, it was worth every fight. We did good, didn't we? We did better than good. We survived, and then we thrived. And then we built something that'll outlast us both. Grace looked at the mine entrance, still producing, still profitable, still standing. Thomas would be proud. Daniel too. Flint was quiet for a moment. I visited his grave last week. Told him about the grandchildren, about the company, about how I finally stopped apologizing for being alive. What did he say? Nothing, but I think he'd approve. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dropped behind the western peaks. Somewhere below, Silverton glowed with lamplight. Somewhere in Denver, Sutton rotted in his cell. Somewhere in time, a desperate widow had refused to surrender and changed everything. Grace thought about that woman, young, terrified, holding her daughters and a rifle against the world. Thought about how far she'd come, how much she'd built, how many lives she'd changed by simply refusing to quit. I hope she knows, Grace said softly. Who? The me from 40 years ago. The one standing in the snow with nowhere to go. I hope she knows it turns out okay. That she survives. That her daughters grow up strong. That she finds love again. Grace's voice cracked. I hope she knows she doesn't have to be so afraid. Flint pulled her close. She knows. She's you. And you're still here. Still fighting. Still building. I'm tired, James. I know. Me too. But it was worth it. Every second. They sat together until the stars came out, two people who'd beaten impossible odds and built impossible things. Two people who'd transformed grief into purpose, fear into courage, loss into legacy. As the night deepened and the mountains settled into sleep, Grace Morrison closed her eyes and thought about all the women who'd come after her. The widows who'd found work at her company. The daughters who'd seen a woman succeed and believed they could too. The granddaughters who'd never know a world where women couldn't own mines or run businesses or build empires from nothing. She'd changed things. Not alone, never alone, but she'd been part of it. The slow revolution of women claiming space, demanding respect, refusing to be crushed by men like Sutton. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. Grace opened her eyes, looked at Flint. Thank you. For what? For saving me that first night, for staying, for loving me even when I was too broken to love back, for being the partner I needed even though you were terrified. You saved me too, you know, from drowning, from giving up, from believing I was nothing but the worst thing I'd ever done. He kissed her hand. We saved each other. Yes, we did. The moon rose full and bright. The creek sang its endless song. The mine stood silent and dark, resting until morning when work would begin again. Grace and Flint went inside, locked the door, climbed into bed. Two people who'd survived the unsurvivable. Two people who'd built a life from ashes and determination and a drunk engineer's shaking hands. Two people who'd learned that survival wasn't the same as living, but that both were worth fighting for. And as sleep claimed them, Grace Morrison thought one final time about that desperate woman in the snow holding her daughters, staring at locked doors and a frozen mountain and a world that wanted her dead. She whispered into the darkness, You make it. You survive. You win. Don't give up. Because 40 years of living had taught her one unshakable truth. The world might try to break. You might try to crush you under the weight of grief and poverty. And men who believed power made them gods. But if you refused to surrender, if you found people worth fighting beside, if you chose courage over comfort and purpose over safety, then you could build something they couldn't touch, couldn't steal, couldn't destroy. You could build a life worth living, a family worth loving, a legacy worth leaving. And that was worth every scar, every tear, every terrifying moment when survival seemed impossible, but you fought anyway. Grace Morrison had learned that lesson in blood and silver and midnight rides through snow, and she'd never forgotten it, not once, not ever.